of August in 2022. I ask now the Prime Creator, source of all light and being, to bless this person sitting here in front, that only the truth comes forth to the best and highest good for everyone involved and to the best of my capacities. All right, now, you did pretty good in the classes, right? It was fairly easy for you, you could follow easy, and you got things done, right?
It was really good.
Okay, good.
Really good.
I have added on certain little videos here, there, and so on. So if you want to check and flip through the different modules to see whether there's anything new. For example, yesterday I had a lady, she said, I want to do the funnel meditation. Can you quickly do that? You know, how to open a funnel. I have a hard time with this or that. So I did 2 little video clips, one on how to do that, and then also samples on how a funnel could look like to get the information and such thing. So you have the whole module link. So any kind of updates or anything you can look at the recordings from group 5 now or from previous recordings, because every group is a little bit different.
Okay.
Just as a side note. So what is of your interest today?
So I do have some questions. First, I have to thank you. You know, all of this started because of you. And I just cannot believe how everything that I was taught is just all basically garbage. It's all and I just can't believe it has taken me so long to just all of a sudden it's like, oh my God. And when I ask a question, it leads to another question and another question. And it just does. I can sit here for hours, Claudia. I mean hours, just thinking about like all of these different things. So in doing that, and I wrote down some questions, and I'm sure if I'm all over the place, I'm sorry.
That is absolutely fine. It doesn't bother me. You know, I thrive on questions. So I sometimes go off topic, you know, when a question is, and then it leads to another thing, and that's totally fine. And I just trust that what needs to be said will be said. So
okay.
Your first question.
Okay, so the first thing that came to mind is, why don't certain souls cross over? Why don't they get to like where they're supposed to be?
Certain souls, look, think about the elevator effect, that we are here, but we are also up there. So yeah. Ultimately, they are already crossed over. But let's say the question would be, how get a ghost created? A ghost will be created, for example, by some of their energy bodies staying here for a particular reason. Let's say a drinker's body is craving the drink, even though the physical form is gone, the emotional component of the need to drink might not be gone, and then lives on in the form of attachment on another drinker, but also this consciousness of the drinker can for a certain amount of time live on. Or the soul, part of the soul is always up there. Right. So ultimately, I do not perceive that anybody can get really, truly forever and ever be lost. I haven't met anybody except one soul. When I talked to the person, he committed suicide, was belief structured into, you know, people are condemned then, and, you know, and so he believed this condemnation, that he was condemned and therefore was in a dark hole. And while I was talking to him, explaining to his, you know, leftover loved ones here on earth, what was happening, he listened, and while I was talking, ultimately also addressing to him, it lightened around him. And I said, well, the only thing what he needs is to really be open to be lifted up in that moment, and a being or an angel and so on, a helper, one of his guardians would catch him by the hand. And I'm still getting chills talking about it. And that happened. I mean, I could see it with my third eye. A hand was going down and he was grabbing hold of it and everything went light. And I said, wow, you know, I'm witnessing this and this and this. And so they were very relieved because they could feel him too lingering in the house. yeah, in a sense. So sometimes it's ignorance, sometimes it's not wanting to go to the other side out of fear, like atheists. Sometimes I see they refuse to go on higher because, and then they create themselves this. Yeah, I give another example. I studied there in Paderborn in Germany, and my boyfriend at the time and I were both very psychic, so we both saw things, both. And all of a sudden, we were seeing this guy coming into our home unannounced. Before, at that time, I didn't have security layers or anything, right? And said, finally, somebody who can see me. Everybody went nuts. Nobody can see me and hear me, only you guys. What's up with the world? Blah, blah, blah. So we knew that he was a ghost. Then we asked him, well, where do you live? You know, you show you up unannounced. Where do you live? Oh, I live this in the street. So it was 2 doors down. I mean, it was not far. And when we went there, we realized that the guy had died, didn't believe anything. And he was complaining to us that now other people live with him in his house, and how dare they only moving in and. And because he was so resistant to move on, we really had to get the light portal up and really shove him through with the help. And he was so condensed in his anger and frustration that he could even throw pillows at us. And that's where we had enough and said, you got to go. And that's where we really, with conjoined power, shoved him into the light. So, you know, people who don't believe anything, people who believe that there are through greed or through, this is my world, this is my house, this is my possession, this is all I have, and they're hanging on to it with all the might they can and ignoring the call to go to the light. But sooner or later, part of them takes over. And so sometimes we have a conglomerate of souls who, or soul leftover layers, who form with a leftover fragment of consciousness something else. And that can be very evil because that stuff, that thing, that elemental, that greed elemental or lust elemental or anger elemental or whatever, you know, it's so looks its own component, creates a kind of a consciousness was very limited and then acts out. You know, I think to me that's a little bit what the poltergeist stuff is. Because consciousness acts out, but it's not a soul really. It's a leftover dynamic. That brings me to this thing about gods, you know? So like the Greek gods, the Celtic gods and all that, to me, it's kind of like a field of consciousness. So as a field of consciousness of light or protection or growth or abundance or that exists, you know, with certain dynamics and personas, like in the Greek mythology or Celtic mythology. So are also on the lower frequency level, these kind of fields with anger, lust, frustration, and they can then create a consciousness or be sponsored, let's say, by a demonic entity who uses these kind of fields like little helpers, yeah? Bother this, do this, annoy that, so that I can feed.
So is that why we're supposed to let everything go?
Yes.
Forgiveness and love and light and ego and all of that. So that way
because when you see it in one of my letting go CDs, I used the thing about a balloon and sandbags. Now the soul right now is full of sandbags. Artificial DNA we signed up for. We signed up for you know, connections with our parents just to be here, yeah, to support their energy belief structures for 7 generations. But once we are over the family karma or the entrance fee karma, then we are free to really be who we are supposed to be, not before. Before we are supporting the construct in the matrix. And then after that, we are letting go. We're starting to come into our own. Now, when we are crossing back over, the last pocket doesn't, have any, the last skirt doesn't have any pockets. So we have to let go of our wells. And normally, magnetically, you are drawn to love. You're drawn to like moth to the flame. So most people do not have any problem in just giving themselves over to light. Even people who are getting out of body experience through operations, they always talk about the near-death experience going towards the light and so on. That's natural. And in that process, when you're looking at the light, and ultimately it starts here, and you're seeing down your tunnel of soul, you're seeing down to your higher self. And that's where they're waiting, like family members and so on. And mostly somebody comes really close down and helps you peel yourself out. So I almost want to say the statement that nobody really dies alone, even though we might be alone here in bed and nobody's there, but nobody really dies alone. Somebody's always helping you out of your body, whether it's an angel or a crossed over loved one. Or according to your belief structure, might be Jesus. If you insist Jesus, you might encounter Jesus, or you might encounter whatever your belief structure is.
Right.
But then also you have to let go. There was a bishop who channeled down to a person in his congregation a book, and Bishop Martin. It's unfortunately not translated into English. Otherwise, I would have made it a must read for the class, because when he crossed over and he could hear the prayers and what all the monks and all the others had to be done for him, in Catholic Church to pray so that he could move forward. First of all, he was so full of ego that he thought, well, why didn't Jesus pick me up? Where is Jesus? And he waited, and he got annoyed about not being picked up. Everything was dark. There was nothing there because he didn't follow his soul path. He just followed his ego. So he's stuck in the lower astral level where it is dark. Remember when we were talking about the exercise about light, dark, light, seeing your shape shift and all that? That's where he got stuck. And then he had to go through this cleansing process. Let's say the first thing he saw was actually a Protestant church instead of a Catholic church, because he believed only the Catholics can go through to heaven. Yeah. And so now he was a Protestant church. So he had to learn tolerance. Then he had to saw dark fish in a murky pond. That was a symbol of his emotional system. So he had to clear the waters. Then he had to do this, then until he finally got grace with the presence of Jesus, who then told him a thing or two, and then who also said, you're allowed to dictate this so that the world might know. And I'm still getting chills.
That's amazing. Yes. Oh my gosh, that is amazing.
Bishop Martin, I have to look, maybe meanwhile it is translated. Of course, it would make a very controversial book. So I don't think it is, but that was amazing. That was an amazing book.
Wow. So he still had lessons to learn even when he passed over.
Yes. Sometimes for that reason, let's say I had a client, she got severely raped by her own father. Of course, when he died, she was relieved, but then he had to come to make amends. She didn't want to have anything to do with him because she was not ready to forgive, which the forgiveness is like a sandbag of our balloon. When you can forgive, you will be lighter. It's not, you don't do it for somebody else, you do it for yourself. Yes. But that understanding needs to grow in a person. So then her father came and he didn't want to have anything to do with it. And she could feel the presence, and to her it was all essence of evil. Understandable. However, this soul had to make up for bad do's. I have it in many sessions that souls come from the family lineage to say, I brought, let's say, rape into the family dynamics. I have to make amends and have to help my ancestors who were also abused. So, and then the soul learns while they're making up and balancing out. So that is very common.
What? And what was his name again? Dr. Martin?
The book Bishop Martin.
Bishop Martin.
Martin. I don't know. I have to see, maybe I find it in German first to see which author it was, because I have moved so much. I don't have so many German books. I left them all over there with my girlfriend, who's also deceased now. But I will check it. I will definitely check it and maybe post it then in the fast track group if I find it.
That's amazing. There's just thinking that he should have automatically just been in the presence of God, just took it all for granted, and didn't even realize, that he was intolerant and all of that kind of stuff. That is fascinating. So it's safe to say that there is no hell.
Well, we're living in a hell. We are creating a hell. We signed up for polarity. We signed up for hell and damnation. I mean, there are demons, but how my guiding ones described it to me. I mean, my husband is very religious, so we had just yesterday a lot of discussions about that, about a statement I made. And I can say this. One of the things I noticed also with my own grandmother, when the soul leaves the body and the persona is fearful, the soul vibration gets higher and higher and higher, like sunbeams. So it has a sense of burning. And when you ask nurses, they are having this sense of that the patient's temperature gets higher. And when the patient's temperature gets higher, that means they're transitioning out of the body.
And this is right with death?
My grandmother screamed that she was in hell. The most religious woman I've ever met screamed that she was in hell when she was burning up. And then all of a sudden, peace came about her and the process was over. Yeah. So, but she believed herself in hell for whatever subconscious structures, because they had to flee the war, and she had to do things she normally wouldn't have done to survive for her kids. But that, I think, plays a role in your construct of thought processing. Yeah, so she had to break through that barrier. Now, I have looked for it, but I haven't seen any hell. But I know that in our creations, we create ourselves hell. When I remember that Christians were persecuted in the arena and ripped to pieces by lions, and I was there to witness because they were my followers in another lifetime, that was for me a living hell, which still bled into this life. That's why I didn't want to be famous. So hell with the devil, I mean, there is a devil, there is a counteract to light. That's what we need in polarity. But I was taught that, remember the tree of life thing? There's the lowest level and then the above part and then the below part.
Yes.
That the devil and all its minions and demons are all part of the below part of duality. They have no access, like it says in the Bible, through the kingdom of heaven. But also in another book in Germany, I think even it might have been a chapter in the Bishop Martin's book, the bishop asked then the presence of God all these questions, like, what about a hell? And so he was given the power over the devil for a certain amount of time and made the devil scream and squirt and do. And then he had to come to the sensation that the devil was only doing his job description of delivering a polarity so that polarity could be experienced.
Okay.
And it came through the understanding, like, no, it doesn't cause me pleasure to give the dark side, distress. So in other words, we have extreme saints and we have extreme villains. That's the extremes of polarity. Yeah? But there is one rule, And that's what people do not understand who are not believing in past lives or parallel lives, as we know. The rule that if you want to be a famous doctor and you need a lot of patients, you will be several times a patient. If you want to be a rich guy with a lot of servants, you have to be several times a servant. Now, when you're the servant, you're asking, why, God, why did you let me do this? Or sometimes we ask in our life, what in the world was I thinking to sign up for this crap? If I am signing up, what? Because there's destiny and there's free will. And sometimes when we want this, we have to experience the other, same side of the medallion, to counterbalance that our account stays, as if our account is not in zero, we cannot ascend to the highest high. It has to be, it's like if a forest grows and grows and grows, but only if the forest is done with all the trees does the forest disappear into oneness again. Or if our lives are all balanced, there needs to be at least 3 to 4 lives who are totally conscious aware, like spiritually aware, who then could pull up all the others. Remember, we are living in a multiverse. So uplifting the experiences to a more uniform understanding. And then it's like the soul's experience of cycling dies and merges completely forever and ever, no more incarnations, into the oneness. Now, there are souls.
Oh, really? So so your soul gets to a point?
Has a cycle, like a tree has a life cycle. A soul has a life cycle. Okay. Even if the soul splits up in myriads of lifetimes, even the soul has a cycle. Let's say if you have experienced everything, rich, poor, male, female, this, that, extraterrestrial, this, higher dimension, that, blah, 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 whatever you can come up with, but you ever as a soul wanted to explore, when you have done all that, you just have the urge to go back to oneness. You don't want to do anything polarity anymore. You don't want anything on higher, even on the 12th dimension polarity. You don't want to, none of it. You want only home, 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 nothing more, home. And when that happens, there comes a guide, like a perfect living master, like Jesus, or there are others. Some call them gurus in India, but there comes somebody and says, I take you by the hand and guide you all the way home, that you can absorb all your fragments and you're coming high. But no more sidestepping into any kind of interest of reality in any kind of dimension. You're just focusing on the highest high. And that's when I asked them, my guides, but what about the me thing? Will I still remember that I am soul? And they said to me, it's like you are the drop in the ocean, but you also feel the ocean. You are the ocean. You are the drop, but you are also the ocean. So you become that expanded consciousness awareness.
Into the absolute.
Yes, into the absolute. Mm-hmm.
Into the absolute. Wow. Okay. So how do you know, like you remember, I remember you had once said that you remember actually being born. Mm-hmm. Being born, that in the birth canal. Like how do you get there? How do I get there that I can remember my past lifetimes, or that I can remember my purpose? That's kind of where I'm stuck right now. Like, what is my purpose? Why am I here? And I think about my life, and I think about, well, okay, maybe I am supposed to be alone to prepare for my next adventure, or maybe I'm doing this because I've had a pretty good life. Mm-hmm. Things always worked out for me. I have absolutely no complaints, and I've learned a lot, and I'm still learning a lot. So how do I get to that point? Okay. Like, I'm so curious. And then you also say, well, I could be living, 3 lifetimes at the same time. And would that be on different planes?
Yes.
Oh, see, so how do I find these answers?
Okay, first of all, thank you for reminding me. I will do and create the purpose meditation. Yeah. And I learned that we did a purpose meditation. I actually did a little bit of that in one module. I don't remember which module. I think it was one of the later ones. And it brings us to the time and space. I think I did it one also in fast track, but I can do another one where we're going to the point in time and space where we made the decision to actually come here.
Okay.
And it's a similar technique where you can check into past lives. Ultimately, you go in and up as high as you can. And in the past life, then you go down a golden strand of soul and click into a life. But in regard of the purpose, then you go up and right and left or whatever in the dynamics of dimension where you made the decision. In my particular purpose, I was in this in-between state, in this, it almost looked to me like a white light cafeteria. Cafeteria is the only human word which I can come up for, where you leisurely hang out as soul. And in my case, I saw the earth, and they asked me, or they said, okay, we agreed that you have this and this and this experience, and you are coming with this and this purpose. So how do you want to fulfill this? Do you want to be male or female? So I chose female. Do you want to be born here or there? I chose country Germany, and skin tone lighter, and all these, the looks to be, and then challengers, the challenges to grow, to expand, or in my fact, to have understanding of the human condition in a lot of ways. So people volunteered for these challenges. And normally when you dive down, when you go through the lower astral level, you forget who you are. You put your blinkers on and you're diving down. That's part that we do not get sidetracked with all the information of once we once were, that we can focus at the task at hand. Like, how can you focus if you have a radio blurring and a TV blurring and somebody standing next to you talking into your ear, and then somebody is behind you, and you're supposed to focus on a task and do it good. Too many distractions. That's why we put blinkers on.
So we're not supposed to remember. We know when the task comes up for the lesson to be learned to move on to the next thing.
Right. And in my particular case, I was allowed to remember because it was necessary to be able to explain today the one or the other and to put it in humanoid wordings. Yeah, I'm not complaining. I'm not saying that I would be any guru or any kind of this or any kind of that. I just came here with a task to make people's life better and to explain certain things, like when people are advanced and have thinking questions, how can this be? How does this work out? How fits that in? And yes, you cannot grasp with your mind, with your limited thinking in a three-dimensional low energy setting, the secrets of the universe and all existence and source. Yeah, our mind is not capable. So I set myself the task to explain what could be, and I had to remember. So when you are incarnated here, you're dimming down. That's a natural process.
Okay.
Now, only these perfect living masters, they do not dim down. They have full-blown awareness of everything, of everything, of everything. But their purpose, again, is to bring the souls down, and that's what they're focusing on. They're not focusing on making other people's lives better. Yeah, they don't waste their energy on that. Their purpose is to, let's go up. So I came with three things. That's why I did healing first, and then I did counseling and consulting, and now I'm in this third phase of explaining how spirit works. And for that, I ask sometimes my guides, and this elevator symbol and the pyramid symbol and the tree of life symbol came from them as an explanation how I could relate this to a co-fellow human in an understandable way to make them think slowly and steadily. You know, not everybody's born as a multidimensional thinker. We are happy when we get our life in order from birth to death, right? I mean,
right.
there's enough challenges, but for the ones like you who are advanced in its thinking now and questioning and thinking outside the given box of 3D into the fourth dimensional realities, what else is out there too, and so on and so forth, it goes a little bit different. And then, of course, there are people who are like Eckhart Tolle, who are talking about being in the moment. The moment is the only thing. Yes, it is ultimately there, because when you're in that moment, totally relaxed, you're always connected to your highest high in a way. So then you are the most receptive to getting the information you need. You know, then your funnel or your channel is fully open to receive the information you need to perform your best. Ultimately, like Dr. Joe Dispenza would say, you're swimming in time and space of awareness. And also you're picking everything up from there, from the oneness. And that's why he does his projective meditation, where you envision yourself to be in time and space, you know, in space. So being in a space of ultimate wisdom, being in a space of oneness, being in a space. So meditation, one way or another, gets you to a higher order of awareness. But one can do directive purpose meditation to go there in time and space too, with a directive, I want to go there. Ultimately, what you do is you're envisioning building up your golden light strand as high as you can imagine. And then you go a little bit further and say, I want to go there to the moment in time and space where I made a decision with the purpose for this life. And just follow the golden strand in your mind. Wherever it leads you, it will lead you somewhere. And then all of a sudden you're there. And then just open up to see or perceive or feel. And you will get a download. But as our human brain capacitor, the brain is not necessarily as wide or big to digest all the information. It might come in spurts.
Okay. So what would be the difference then of dreaming and projecting, or are they the same?
I wouldn't say they are not necessarily the same, depending on what you mean with projecting. I presume right now that you mean with projecting, let's say. Stay tuned for more questions.